Hello everyone, enhance your knowledge with today's lesson. In this video, you will be able to obtain the content in less than 1 hour, which is the summarized version of the United Kingdom tax system. And then you are really lucky to be watching this video. Why? That is because you will not be able to obtain such a knowledge in any platform. Therefore, make sure you take full advantage of this. And then before moving on to this video, make sure you remember two things. Number one, you need to have sufficient knowledge, at least the basic knowledge about the United Kingdom taxes. And then number two, you need to have the updated tax rates and allowances document with you, which is roughly 3 to 4 pages, and it is available to everyone. And then let's move on straight away to the topic. So our syllabus content number one, there are 5 types of taxes. So number one, it is income tax individuals. Now what is this? Yes, this is where the individuals need to pay taxes on the income they earn annually. So this is where this is a very important area in your ACCA tax syllabus, which will give you sufficient marks and which will be a main reason for you to pass your exams with flying colors. And then moving on, corporation tax for companies. As you can see, there are 5 points. Number 2, corporation tax for companies. What is this? Yes, this is where your companies pay taxes on whatever they earn. So this is the basic knowledge that you need to have. And then moving on, chargeable gains. As you can see, what is this? Yes, this is where chargeable gains is where you pay your taxes on the profits you make by selling an asset. So this is the basic knowledge. And then moving on, the inheritance tax. What is this? Yes, inheritance tax is where you get a gift from someone, from a person to another person. And then on top of that gift, you need to pay taxes. So make sure you need to have this knowledge in your ACCA tax syllabus. And then value-added tax. Finally, what is this? Yes, this is a type of indirect tax which will give you a sufficient amount of marks in your examination. So what is value-added tax? Yes, this is a tax that you don't pay directly to the income tax department, but this goes indirectly to the income tax department. So now you know the basic 5 types of taxes, and these, if you know these 5 areas, clearly you are going to pass the exam with flying colors, and you know everything about United Kingdom taxes. And if you know clearly these 5 concepts available, and then we are moving on to the next one. So our next content is where the 5 types of taxes. So we have already learned this in our previous slide. Then moving on to the progressive tax system. What is this? Yes, the progressive tax system is where the more you earn, the more you will be required to pay taxes. And then the regressive tax system. This is where the lesser you earn, the more you will be required to pay taxes. So direct opposite of what progressive tax system is. And then proportionate tax system. What is this? Yes, the percentage does not change even though whatever the amount you earn. So these are the types of taxes you need to remember, the tax systems. And then moving on, direct tax and indirect tax. What are these? Yes, direct tax is where you pay your taxes directly to the income tax department. For example, your individual income tax, your company income tax, you directly pay to the income tax department. And then indirect taxes. What is this? Yes, you do not pay it directly. You pay it through someone else. For example, your value-added tax, which is tax on goods and services. You do not pay it directly to the tax department, but what you do is you pay to someone else, and that person pays to the income tax department. And then now you know what are the types of taxes. And then the last part, which is very important, tax avoidance and tax evasion. This is something that people do it on a regular basis. Tax avoidance is something you legally reduce your taxes, and tax evasion is something you illegally avoid paying taxes. And then moving on to the next slide, there are 9 key points in the income tax computation, and this is very important aspect of your ACCA Tax UK. So number 1, computation of taxable income. You need to have a proper thorough knowledge on how to compute the taxable income, and this will give you sufficient marks for you to get through the exam with flying colors. So computation of taxable income, for example, the income minus expenses, and there are so many areas that you need to keep in mind. What are the types of expenses that you can deduct it from your income, and then you need to arrive at certain percentages of taxes. And then types of exempt income. What are the types? There are 3 types you need to remember, which is related to individual savings account, which are clearly available in my theory notes. So if you have purchased my theory videos, you are clear with this number 2 topic, which is the types of exempt income. And then number 3, we are moving on, income from investments. As you can see, so this is something, the income you do not earn from your business income, but this is investment income. You invest it somewhere else and then you get a type of an amount of profit. So make sure the third type, income from investment, is something that is beyond your syllabus. And then personal allowance. What is this? Yes, personal allowance is something that is given to you as a tax relief. For example, this is an example. Make sure the tax rates and allowances document is with you. So personal allowance, for example, it is 20,000 and your income, your total income is 100,000, and then you need to pay taxes only on 80,000. Why? The personal allowance is a deduction of your taxes. So make sure you are having the updated tax rates and allowances document, and in that document all the informations are available apart from my theory notes. And then allowable deductions. What are these? Yes, the allowable deductions is where the expenditure that is incurred for the production of income, which is directly related to the business, those are the expenses that are allowable to deduct. And then payments to charity. If you give charity, there is a different way that you need to treat by, and then there is a different way how you get the tax benefit out of the payment to charity. So make sure these are the small concepts that you need to keep in mind before you go to the exam. And then taxes on jointly owned assets. What is this? Yes, if you have jointly owned assets between spouses, you need to pay taxes on a different basis. So make sure this is a type of tax benefit that spouses use to obtain in their taxation. And then child benefit income tax charge. What is this? Yes, if you receive a child benefit from the government, you need to pay a certain percentage as taxes. And then finally, residency rules. What is this? Yes, this is the criteria, the conditions that you have to meet in order to become a resident of United Kingdom. So I hope you have covered the entire 9 points, and we are moving on to the next one. And then moving on, property income and investments. So there are 6 key points that you need to remember, which will give you certain amount of marks in your examination. So number 1, allowable deductions. Yes, there are types of allowable deductions which are related to your property income and investments, which you need to have a clear understanding if you have followed all my notes and videos. And then property losses. How to deal with property losses? Yes, if you are having a property loss in the current year, you can set it off against the property income that you will be obtaining in the following year. So these are the small concepts that you need to keep in mind. And then finance expenses on property. What is this? Yes, the interest cost that you incur on your property. Is it claimable or is it not allowable? You need to make sure by following my notes. And then furnished holiday lettings is another important concept where you give your holiday rent by giving a furnished apartment. And then rent a room relief. What is this? Yes, there is an amount that you are obtaining, that you are willing to allow as your allowable deduction as a rent a room relief. So make sure everything is available. So make sure you are going through all my notes and keeping a proper concept. And then lease premiums on short lease. What is this? Yes, the lease premiums, there are different ways to calculate your lease premiums, and make sure you are having another good knowledge, sharpen your knowledge with this concept. And then moving on to the most important concept of your ACCA tax syllabus, which is the capital allowances. So these 6 points is very, very important. So number one, annual investment allowance. What is this? Yes, annual investment allowance is where you are getting an amount of relief for the expenditure that you incur on your assets. If you buy new assets in a tax year, you will be getting a certain percentage, certain amount of tax relief. So this is annual investment allowance. And then writing down allowance. What is this? Yes, this depends on the carbon dioxide emissions that your vehicle generates, that your vehicle gives out. So make sure writing down allowance has a different percentage. This is not an amount, this is a percentage which will be reduced and given to you as a capital allowances. So first year allowance, what is this? Yes, first year allowance is where when you purchase an asset in your first year, you will be receiving a certain percentage of your allowances. And then main pool and special rate pool is where there are different criteria when to recognize under main pool and what is the criteria to be recognized under special rate pool. So make sure you are 100% thorough with all these concepts. And then the last two, balancing allowance and balancing charge. What is this? For example, if you sell an asset and then you are obtaining a profit, if you are obtaining a profit, that is balancing charge. And then if you are selling an asset and if you are having a loss, that is where balancing allowances comes into play. So these 6 concepts are very, very important, and make sure you go through in detail by following my course and watching my videos and looking at my theory notes. And then taxation for partnership. So there are 6 key points that you need to keep in mind, which will give you a majority of the marks in your examination related to individuals and partnership. So number one, allocation of profits and losses. As you can see, how to allocate the profits and losses? Yes, that is based on the profit sharing ratio. And then if there is a change in the profit sharing ratio, how to deal with this? Yes, we have spoken in detail in our videos how to deal with that. And then capital allowances for partnership is another important concept. And then commencement and cessation, how to identify? Yes, there are different rules when you are commencing a partnership and ceasing a partnership. So make sure you are thorough with these concepts. And then change in the membership. What is this? Yes, this is where a person, a member, a partner goes out or another partner comes into the partnership. So there are different rules in those as well. So make sure you have got a proper idea by going through all my theory notes. And then loss relief on partnership losses. How to obtain the relief? For example, if you are having a loss in the current year of your partnership, there is a way that you can claim that loss. How? Yes, by setting it off against the profits. But there is a mechanism, and you need to make sure you go through my notes and be thorough with all these 6 concepts, which will eventually result in you getting through the exam with flying colors. And then we are moving on to the taxes on your employment income. So, number one, employment versus self-employment. What is this? Yes, employment is versus self-employment is where employment is something you work for someone else, and then self-employment is where you work for your own self. So this is the difference between employment and self-employment. So make sure you need to have proper knowledge on this, which can be tested in your examination. And sources of income which will be taxed. There are different sources of employment income. What are those? Salaries, wages, bonuses, incentives, everything. There are many sources of income that will be taxed, and you need to have a proper idea. And then deductible expenses. What are the deductible expenses? Yes, for example, the travel expenses that are incurred for the production of income, which is directly related to the business. Yes, those are the types of expenses that are deductible. And then approved mileage allowances. As you can see, what is this? Yes, there is a certain amount which is given to you as an approved mileage allowance, for which your travel expenditure will be reduced. And then exempt benefits and taxable benefits. What are these? What are the exempt benefits? For example, if your employer is providing you with a certain amount for your meal expenses, for your canteen, and then this is a type of expense, this is a type of benefit that is exempt from your income tax. And then taxable benefits, there are many benefits that are taxable. We have already learned this in our videos, in our theory videos, in our notes. So make sure you are having a proper knowledge on this. And then moving on to pension schemes and NIC. What is this? Yes, pension schemes and national insurance contribution. So, number one, tax reliefs on pension schemes. Before moving on to tax reliefs on pension schemes, you need to identify there are 2 types of pension schemes. Number one is personal pension scheme, and number 2, occupational pension scheme. So there are 2 types. First of all, what is personal pension scheme? Yes, this is a third party pension scheme. And then occupational pension scheme is where this is a scheme that is set up by your employer. So this basic understanding needs to be available. And then tax relief. Yes, obtaining the tax relief depends on the type of pension scheme. So there are 2 types. So tax relief depends on those 2 types, how you go with the tax relief. And then annual allowance for pensions. What is this? Yes, annual allowance is where there is a limit of obtaining your allowances, and you need to have a proper understanding on this. And then NIC related to employees, employers, and self-employed. So there are 3 types of NIC: national insurance contribution. So this depends, the percentage depends on whether you are an employee, employer, or self-employed. And then there is different ways of paying those taxes. So this is something that you need to make sure you are having a proper understanding on the national insurance contribution. If you know these 3 concepts, which is related to employee, employer, and self-employed, you are done with your NIC chapter. So we are moving on to the next one. And then we are moving on to another very important area, which is capital gains taxes related to individuals. Yes, this is very, very important, and this is not an easy concept as you think. So number one, what is CGT, capital gains taxes? So capital gains tax, in the word itself, you need to be able to understand. Yes, when do you get a capital gain? Yes, by selling an asset. When you sell an asset, you get a capital gain, and on top of that capital gain, you need to be able to pay taxes. And then types of capital gains taxes, there are 2 types. Number one, related to individuals, and number 2 is related to your companies. So these are the two types of capital gains taxes that you need to keep in mind. And then how to compute CGT. As you can see, CGT is where there is one way, one mechanism, which is proceeds minus cost. Whatever you get minus whatever the cost is. So this is the basic concept, but there are more things to learn which you would have already learned before watching this video. You would have already had certain knowledge about this. And then what is annual exempt amount? As you can see, yes, this is where the income tax department gives you a certain percentage, certain amount of allowance from your capital gain in an annual year, in a tax year. So this year, in a tax year, there is a certain percentage, certain amount that you do not need to pay taxes on your capital gain. That depends on the tax year and it keeps frequently changing, and I hope you have the tax rates and allowances document with you and you can refer that before the exam. And then dealing with capital losses. As you can see, how to deal with capital losses. Yes, if you are having a capital loss, there is no capital gain but there is a capital loss, you have to set it off against your capital gain in the following year. So these 5 concepts are very, very important, and make sure you are giving your 100% to get a thorough understanding on this. And then this is another part of your capital gains taxes, which is there are 5 types of reliefs. As you can see, there are 5 types of reliefs which you need to have in your mind. There are conditions that needs to be fulfilled to obtain these types of reliefs. So number 1, business assets disposal relief. As you can see, so what is this? Yes, this is a type of relief which has several conditions. For example, you need to be holding at least 5% of the shareholding of that company, and then the asset has to be owned at least for 2 years before disposing. So these are the types of conditions I have given you as an example, but these conditions can change. What you need to do? Yes, you need to have your notes, your theory notes with you, which I have clearly given you if you would have purchased my course, and then you will be able to obtain sufficient knowledge and make sure you are thorough with the business assets disposal relief conditions, which is very important and highly likely to be tested in your ACCA exam. And then investors relief. What is this? Yes, this is related to the investments on the unquoted companies in the stock exchange. Yes, so investors relief is something that the investors get by investing in unquoted companies. So there are different conditions for that as well. You need to be aware. And then rollover relief. What is this? What is rollover relief? Yes, this is where if you sell an asset and then from the proceeds that you get, you invest it in another asset. So make sure this is rollover relief. If you roll over your gain, you do not need to pay taxes now, but it would be deferred. And then gift holdover relief is also something when you get a gift and then you sell it, and there is another relief if you follow the conditions. And then private residence relief. What is this? Yes, if you are owning a private residence, if you had stayed, if you had occupied that for a certain period of time and then you are selling it, you do not need to pay the entire tax which is related to entire gain. No, there is a relief on which you can reduce your taxes. So these 5 types of reliefs are very, very important, and make sure you are thorough and you have a good understanding on these. And then tax administration for individuals, and this is very important. Why? This will give you at least 10 to 15 marks in your examination. So make sure you're having a thorough knowledge on this. Number 1, what is self-assessment tax return? Okay, what is this? Yes, this is where as an individual annually you need to provide a tax return, and quarterly as well. So it depends, and make sure you have a proper understanding on this. And then due dates for payments. What are the due dates? Yes, when do you need to pay taxes is very, very important, and it is clearly available in our theory notes. What is payment on account? Okay, now you may be wondering, what is payment on account? Yes, this is where you divide your payment. For example, divide it by 6 months and you pay biannually, twice a year or 4 times a year you pay taxes. That is what payment on account is, and that is depending on your previous year taxes. So on your imaginary taxes you pay your current year taxes. And then repercussions for late payments. What will happen if you pay taxes late? Yes, you will be charged a penalty, and there are chances that you will be charged a interest and interest cost on top of your penalty. So make sure you are paying your taxes on time, and you need to know what are the repercussions that can be tested in your examination. And then maintaining records for tax purposes. For how long do you need to maintain your records for tax purposes? Yes, that is also clearly available in our notes, and make sure that depends, that changes from year on year. So make sure you have the updated knowledge. And then compliance checks and discovery assessments. As you can see, what is this? Yes, the HMRC, the Income Tax Department of the United Kingdom, can give you a surprise visit and check whether you are paying your taxes, whether you are computing your taxes accurately. So this is their job, and they can do that at their will. And then appeals and disputes. Yes, you as a citizen, you have the right to appeal on whatever the income tax department says. If you think you are not complying with that, you can go and you can appeal, and you have all the rights to do that. So make sure these 7 key points are very, very important, and this will give you certain marks in your examination. And then we are moving on to the most important part of your ACCA tax syllabus, which is corporation tax for companies. So number 1, what is corporation tax? Yes, this is where your companies pay taxes on the income that they generate minus their expenses. And then moving on, the marginal relief. What is your marginal relief? Yes, this is where, for example, if your income is between 50,000 and 250,000, you will be getting a marginal relief, which will give you a certain amount of expenses, certain amount of your income, which will be reduced for your taxes. So make sure you have a proper knowledge on what your marginal relief is. And then total taxable profits. What is this? As you can see, this is a very important concept of total taxable profits. Yes, this is where from your income you reduce all your expenses, your capital allowances, whatever that you have given to charity, and then finally you arrive at your total taxable profit. So this is an important concept. There are different rules that you need to keep in mind. And then allowable deductions. What are the allowable deductions? Yes, whatever the expenditure that is incurred for the production of income. That is very, very important, and make sure these are the things that you need to keep in mind. And then we are moving on to capital allowances. What is this? Yes, capital allowances is where we have already learned this in our previous slides. Capital allowances is something which is related not only to individual but also for companies. So there are different rules that you need to keep in mind. And then dividends rule. What is this? Yes, dividends rule is where even though you receive dividend from a company in UK or an overseas company, this is never taxed. So make sure you keep these things in your mind. Dividends rule is very, very important, and this is something you do not pay taxes on. This is fully exempt. Make sure the examiner will try to trick you by giving these questions, and if you are thorough with the knowledge, you don't need to worry about this. And then we are moving on to chargeable gains for companies. What is capital gains tax for companies? Yes, we have already learned what is CGT for companies. And then this is something which we have already learned under individuals, and there is no big change. And then how to calculate? Yes, we have done this. And then what is indexation allowance? Yes, number 3, indexation allowance. What is this? Yes, this is something that you have a certain benefit that will be reduced as your relief. Yes, you do not need to pay taxes 100%, but you will be getting a relief which will give you a certain tax benefit in your chargeable gain, whatever the income that you give, that you obtain. And then what is share matching rule? There are 3 share matching rules that you need to keep in your mind. We have already done this in your theory notes and in your videos. We have already done this. So make sure you are giving your 100% and getting a good knowledge. And finally, dealing with gains and losses. What is this? Yes, dealing with gains and losses. We have already done this in our individuals. We have already spoken about this. If you are having a loss in the current year, you can get a benefit. You can get a loss deduction when you obtain a profit in the following year. So make sure these are the things that you need to keep in mind. And chargeable gains for companies, I don't think this is a difficult lesson. Why? You already have a proper background on what chargeable gain is. So now we are moving on to corporation tax groups. So number 1, the introduction. What is corporation tax for groups? Yes, in a group of companies, there can be different companies, there can be many companies inside your group. So make sure you take full advantage of those companies. So that is why corporation tax groups has been formed. And then number 2, what is 51% group? Yes, 51% group is where the parent company is holding directly or indirectly at least 50% or more. Okay, at least 51% or more of the shareholding of the other company. So this is what 51% group is, and 75% group is also the same. And then moving on, what is group relief? What is this? Yes, we have already learned this. In a group relief, this is where if there are losses incurred by one company and there is a profit which is produced by another company, you can set it off before paying taxes. So this is the advantage of group relief. And then group chargeable gains is the same thing, where if you get a chargeable gain from a company and then a chargeable loss from another company, you can set it off and then you can finally pay taxes. So make sure these small concepts will give you additional marks during the examination if you have a thorough understanding on these. And then we are moving on to another chapter which is already linked to your previous slide, which is tax administration for individuals. That is linked with the tax administration for companies, and there are 5 key points. These key points we have already discussed under the individuals. Once more, I'm going to go through very quickly. Number 1, corporation tax payment dates. So the payment dates, you need to have a proper understanding. When is the payment date? The tax system keeps updating every year. So make sure you have the updated payment dates with you. If you follow all my theory notes, my theory lectures, this is just a walk in the park for you. And then the return due dates, also the same. And then maintenance of records, there is a certain amount of years, as we have already discussed in individuals as well. In the companies, there is another certain years for which you need to maintain your records. So make sure you have a proper understanding. And then compliance checks and assessment. What is this? We have spoken about this reminding you again, the HMRC, the Income Tax Department, has all the rights to come and visit you and give you a surprise visit and check whether you are computing your taxable income correctly, whether you are paying your taxable income accurately. So these are the things that they have the right on. And then penalties and appeals, finally, you also have the right to make whatever your suggestion is. And then this is all about tax administration for companies. And then moving on to another important area, which is inheritance tax, and this will give you at least 15 to 20 marks in your examination. This is very important. So number one, what is inheritance tax? Yes, this is where you get transfer from a person to another person, a gift transfer from a person to another person during their lifetime or during their death. So this is the basics, what is inheritance tax. And then what are the exempt transfers? Yes, there are many exempt transfers. For example, transfers between spouses. Yes, these are always exempt. So this is one type of transfer which is exempt. And what are potentially exempt transfers? As you can see, what is this? Yes, this is where a person transfers an asset during their lifetime, not during the death, but during their lifetime, from one person to another person. So this is potentially exempt. And if you want to get more knowledge, make sure you are watching all my theory videos which I have given you in my link to purchase the course. So make sure these are the small things, but this will end up finally in resulting in a big reason for you to succeed in your examination. And then what are the chargeable lifetime transfers? Yes, in your exam, chargeable lifetime transfers is where you transfer the amount to a trust. Okay, so this is what chargeable lifetime transfer is. So this during the lifetime and during the death, both you need to pay taxes. And then what is taper relief? Yes, taper relief is something that will reduce your inheritance tax liability. When, for example, if it is more than 3 to 7 years, yes, I am just giving you a basic idea. And if you have watched all my theory videos, this is the knowledge refresher for you. And this is something very easy. So make sure you understand what taper relief is. This is something that will reduce your tax payment related to inheritance tax. And then nil rate band. Yes, this is also, there is a certain amount. Make sure you revisit, and this amount can be changed every year. So make sure you have the updated knowledge. What is the nil rate band on how much your inheritance tax will be reduced, and what is RNRB? As you can see, what is RNRB? Yes, residence nil rate band. If you have a main residence and then that residence will be given to your direct descendants, that those direct descendants will have a certain nil rate band which will reduce their inheritance tax liability. So these 7 points are very, very important, and make sure you have a thorough understanding on what this is. And then this is our last topic which we will be discussing. And then value added tax, which is very, very important. And there are 7 types. These, if you know these 7 criteria in which will be tested in your value added tax question, and at least 15 to 20 marks, at least 20 marks will be tested in your examination. So this is that much important, and make sure you give your 100% focus. So number 1, VAT registration. When do you register for VAT? Yes, VAT registration, if your income goes to above a certain amount, okay, so that certain amount can be changed every year. So make sure you have the updated notes with you. If you do not have, we are here to help you. So those amounts keep changing every year. So VAT registration is where there is a certain amount your turnover needs to be so that you can register for VAT. And then the tax point. Yes, what is tax point? Yes, this is where you need to identify the tax point that will give you the idea where that amount will fall into, in which quarter, when is the due date. So make sure understanding the tax point, the criteria in the tax point is also very, very important. And then output VAT and input VAT. This is very important. Why? Output VAT is where when you sell, you need to pay taxes. So that is output. Okay, make sure you understand. You sell something, and when you are selling, you need to pay output tax. And then when you are having an expenditure, and then this is input tax, and you can deduct it from your output tax. So make sure, so difference between output tax and input tax, what is output and what is input. And then characteristics of VAT invoice. So there are different characteristics. There can be the date of invoice, the amount, the value of supply, the customer, the VAT registration number. So these are the things that should be available in the VAT invoice. And then VAT return filing. Yes, there are due dates. When you need to return your VAT. Is it monthly? Is it quarterly? So make sure you need to identify. And then penalties for delays. As you can see, there can be different penalties for delays, and if you delay your VAT payment, there can be different penalties. So make sure you need to have a proper understanding what are your penalties on these. And then types of VAT scheme. Finally, what are the types of VAT schemes? So there are different types of VAT schemes. So the normal scheme, the annual accounting scheme, the flat rate scheme. So there are different VAT schemes which you need to remember, and this will give you a different and a significant amount of marks in your examination. And I hope now with this we are done with the value added tax, and we are done with the entire summary of your value of your income tax, of your all your ACCA tax. So make sure you are watching this video, and this free content is not available anywhere else. So make sure you're getting your 100% out of this, which is freely available to every one of you. So thank you so much. Until we meet with a new video on another week. Thank you so much.